Writing is my favorite thing to do.
Have you heard about the Gateway to Publishing Conference and Convention? They'll have writing workshops, writing classes, and more. June 16th through 18th, 2017 at the Renaissance Airport Hotel in St. Louis, Missouri.
Cool! Where can I sign up?
Go right now to www.stlwritersguild.org and click on GatewayCon.
www.stlwritersguild.org and click on GatewayCon?
That's right. See you there.
Right Pack Radio, a podcast produced by Winding Trails Media for writers by writers.
Writers, agents, and publishers, for the first time since the Gutenberg Press, find themselves lost in a maze of mystery as technology alters the shape of the publishing industry. Searching for Answers is a group of writers throwing pop culture, writing, and publishing into a crucible of clarity, passion, and humor. This group is the Right Pack.
Hello and welcome back to Right Pack Radio. I'm your host for today, Kathleen Kayembe. I write paranormal romance under the name Kaseka and Vita, and under my own name, I have a short story out in Nightmare Magazine this month called You Will Always Have Family, a triptych, and that is a cat. And with me today, aside from the cat, is...
Fedora Amos. I write Victorian whodunits like Jack the Ripper in St. Louis and Mayhem at Buffalo Bill's Wild West. And I'm president of Greater St. Louis Sisters in Crime.
My name is Jennifer Stolzer. I am a children's book author and illustrator. My premier fantasy novel, Threadcaster, is available now on Amazon. Woohoo! So check that baby out. Read my blood, sweat, and tears pooled into words on the page.
That should be on the book.
It should be on the book. I got room. I can still edit it. That'll be for the special hardbound.
There you go.
Oh, yeah.
It'll say, look at my blood, sweat, and tears, and have a big arrow pointing toward the open page. Yeah. So that's there.
I'm buying both copies. My name is Chanel Etienne. I write stuff, including science fiction and fantasy.
I was going to say I write stuff.
She writes stuff.
I write other
Stole
stuff.
your
Yeah.
thunder.
Brad R. Cook. I am an author of several books. The Iron Horseman, Iron Zulu, and Iron Lotus is out. Go check it out. So the trilogy is complete and all is wondrous. But I just dropped a short story, The Dragon Slayer. It is out there now. It debuted at number 10 on Amazon's bestseller list for
Well,
teen
congratulations.
fiction.
Oh,
Right.
Good
Thank
job.
you.
Yeah.
And awesomeness, it was fun, but it's a tale as old as time with a twist.
I'm like...
We'll leave it at that.
My face you couldn't see, but it was suppressing all the Beauty and the Beast jokes I was getting ready to make.
Me too.
Topical, man. My marketing's topical.
Yeah, sure. Topical or tail-coated.
It's a Dragon Slayer, not a Beast Slayer.
And also with us today.
I'm Melanie Lucas, still recovering from a cold, but I have a voice.
You do.
Yeah.
Unlike your precious husband.
Yes. So,
Who hath been banished.
yes.
He's in the back room pouting.
Suffering from laryngitis. So, I write science fiction, fantasy, and nonfiction.
Everybody, don't listen to these people. David made a very ill-advised deal with a sea witch and lost his voice. That's why he's not here. That's why I'm in charge.
But those gams, let me tell you what.
Them yams, though.
So, today, we are talking about what makes for a profound story. What makes a story so memorable it changes people's lives? What makes a story profound? And before we get into this, and we will get into this, Jennifer has the definition of the word profound that we will definitely quibble over as soon as she's done telling us.
Indeed. Profound, as an adjective, referring to a state, quality, or emotion is very great or intense. This is definitive.
It's huge.
It's huge. It's great. It's intense. Of a person or statement, it is having or showing great knowledge or insight. And when used as a noun, it is the vast depth of the ocean or of the mind.
Thank you for
That was
that.
actually in the definition?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, it's written there, right there on the internet.
So I'm going to go ahead and say the exact same thing I said when I found out about this topic. I literally, and when it comes to fiction, and even like literature and movies, I figure that profoundness is the thing that they put on the back of the book when they have nothing else to say about the book. It's like, oh, it was so profound. It's like like small talk for cocktail parties.
Two people talking about art.
Yes.
Is that some kind of code word for saying, I don't know what the hell it's about?
Exactly.
It feels important, though. You have to
Yes.
get that on there.
Yes.
I don't know what it was about, but it sounded nice.
It should have a pretentious
profound.
apostrophe.
It
or
was
something.
profound. This is all a very cynical definition of the word profound.
Exactly.
It's spoken by people who don't hold profoundness in exceptionally high quality, I
We
guess.
should
High
probably
regard.
mention that in truth what we're talking about here are books that move people, that change your life. You're going along all happy, and go lucky.
And are not necessarily up their own asses.
Okay, and you read it. Well, you might be. I don't know. But you read this book, and it has completely shifted your consciousness, your life, and your thoughts from that moment forward. Sure.
I think it's enlightening.
Apparently, I'm agreed with.
Yes.
From
The
above.
lights just kind of flickered and went on.
The
Well,
lights
that
are-
means Star Wars is a profound movie.
The resident ghost agrees with you.
Alright, Fedora has a response.
Well, I think there's a difference here between pretentious and profound.
Yes.
Yes, good. Make
And-
that distinction because I lean toward
Yes.
pretentious.
And what I think is profound is talked about statements that are deep. And my idea of a statement that is deep is one that will last through the ages and still mean something to people like the one that I'm about to read to you now. Because this was written 6 centuries before Christ. Are you
Oh,
ready
like
for
it.
this?
Yeah.
And by everybody's favorite lesbian, Sappho.
Okay.
All right,
Okay,
you
yeah,
ready?
go for
Love
it.
her.
May I write words more naked than flesh, stronger than bone, more resilient than sinew, more sensitive than nerve. Don't we all wish we could do that? Oh my word.
But she did it first.
And she
And that's the end of the show. We're all just going to be
That's
sad.
several thousand years ago.
That's
We
a
got
lot to live up
beaten
to.
punch several thousand years ago.
Well, I think people can have different definitions of profound, and I also think there's a difference between what changes one person's life because they see it or read it, and what changes, a huge group of people's life.
I'm not
Because-
sure it needs to be life-changing. It needs to be something that we think deeply about.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that's life-changing or not, or whether it confirms what you
Yeah.
already think.
It
If
needs
you
to
think
be-
about it, that's the key.
It needs to be great or intense.
So,
Yes.
okay. So,
So,
some things that I have been doing lately are reading and writing fan fiction. I have read some great stories, some great fan fiction that has changed me inside. It has made me feel deeply. It has changed my life because I started writing that exact same pairing, and it was beautiful. Are those profound?
sure, according to this
I
definition.
think they have to stand the test of time, personally,
Yeah.
to be
The
considered
test of time
profound.
counts.
Now, the love that you are writing about, that is deeper than deep and wider than the horizon, that is profound. But the actual two people that you're talking about, perhaps not.
I don't know. Those Star Wars guys are pretty nice. Speaking of Star Wars.
Speaking of Star Wars,
We did say that Star Wars was possibly profound
I
earlier in a
know.
case study here.
Like, and the other thing is, so I saw Star Wars The Force Awakens and Star Wars Rogue One, and it changed my life seeing people of color in those films. Are they profound then? Or is it a
Your
certain
experience was,
definition?
but that doesn't make the
Where's,
movie
yeah,
profound.
we
so
have
what
to
separates the experience of something profound versus a thing
Because we're
itself
talking
being
about profound writing,
Okay.
not
so,
profound experience, but profound writing.
Okay, so get into that.
Okay. Well, I have another quote from Sappho.
Okay.
more so.
She was plenty arrogant. Although only breath, words which I command, are immortal. And they are, because I just said them. They're still around after almost 3,000 years.
Plato said that...
That's profound.
Plato said that books were immortal sons defying their masters.
By defying their masters, he means defying the people that write them, because yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
I believe there's a Shakespeare sonnet where he says that his the muse that he's writing to is now immortal because he has put her into words.
This is true. And this is the beauty part. I mean, words are something that can stick around for thousands and thousands of years. I was just walking through the art museum yesterday for Art in Bloom, which is a great little thing where they do flowers interpreting the artwork on the wall. And one of the things I was struck by, completely aside from that, was staring at a bust of a man who was, I think it's about 2,500 years old. He no longer exists. It's even just called Bust of a Man.
So his name didn't even linger.
His name doesn't even make it down to us, but this image of this man does. You know, I because it's such a beautiful sculpture, you know exactly what this person looks like. You know, every little detail of his face and everything like that. You know, having that kind of longevity is definitely something that we all tend to look at as being profound. I think it's one of the reasons why we keep words around, sayings. You know, why we still quote Alexander the Great.
We are honoring historical figures by remembering their words and making them part of our vernacular and affect our lives daily, maybe.
Exactly.
But does something have to stick around to qualify as profound? Because there are some things that I'm sure no one's going to remember that have touched people. Like, Shakespeare's plays back in the day weren't necessarily hugely profound and life-changing, but they stuck around, and now we're like, wow, he's deep.
Or he's only deep because we don't understand half the words he's using.
Well, there were a lot of people at the time who preserved the plays, because if they hadn't been preserved, we wouldn't have them today. So there were people at the time who thought they were profound,
I'm learning what I knew this conversation would turn into, and which it has then turned into, is a nebulous attempt to define the word profound. Even though we read the definition at the very beginning, to say that to change profound to profound writing takes a great deal of interpretation. And synonyms for profound that all mean different things are like influential and significant and personal and moving and wide-reaching and things like that. Like, all of these things are part of profound, but none of these things alone make profound. Like, one would say, you don't know profound, man, until you see it.
And do you actually set out to write profound?
I think profound is accidental.
You know?
Or
no,
incidental.
I don't think so at all.
think it's accidental. I think it's incidental.
Okay, incidental. I think profound is incidental.
There are a lot of people who have written aphorisms, maxims, adages.
Oh, my
Any
favorite
of those things.
My favorite Ben Franklin. He just
Those
made
are
them up
all
and just
quite-
said them like they'd been said for many years.
Or no,
They're
or
all
he
quite
stole
deliberate.
them.
Or
They're all
sold
quite
them.
They are
Well, he
lovely,
was still Ben Franklin the whole time, you know.
lovely parallels like this one from Plato. Wise men talk because they have something to say. Fools because they have to say something. It's parallel. It has a lovely structure. And it is profound because the meaning of it is something to think about.
We haven't talked about profound meaning in literature yet.
No, but I
That's
was
a
just
profound
thinking of the
statement.
Gettysburg Address. That was a very profound speech. Now, I'm sure Lincoln was trying to write something meaningful. He was trying to write something profound, but he had no idea if he succeeded or not.
Lincoln was on a train heading out there, trying desperately to write anything down so that he would have something to say when
I
he
saw
got
that
there.
Animaniacs episode.
But he thought he had
Maybe not
failed.
quite that bad.
Okay, so alright.
But remember, Douglas spoke for what, like an hour or something?
Yeah.
I hate to quibble. I don't hate to quibble. I'm
No, you
lying.
don't.
I will quibble.
That was a
this to the
polite way to
ground.
open that. No.
But okay, so profound because of its historical significance, or profound because of the thing itself?
Oh, the Gettysburg Address was profound because of the thing itself and historical significance.
It's like,
What
is it possible
says
to
is
separate
important.
the two?
Yeah, no, what it says is important. How it's said is important. because he did use poetic language. I mean, he starts off with scores, four score, 7 years ago. I mean, now we have to go, what's a score? But back then they knew,
Yeah.
Everyone knew what he was talking about there. But he does go on. I mean, that entire speech is beautiful, partly because it is so encapsulating. It's not very long. It's beautifully written. It begins with a great opening. It ends, on a really high point. It says some really beautiful things through there. It's written with a wordsmith's ear, that we just don't have anymore. I meant that because of speechwriters, not because of the current guy.
I'm going to go to the dictionary.com app for profound, just to remind us that profound is not just a literary term, but I think reading some of these might help us focus in on what we're dancing around. Profound, being or going far beneath what is superficial, external, or obvious, a profound insight. Of deep meaning, of great and broadly inclusive significance, a profound book. Penetrating or entering deeply into subjects of thought or knowledge, having deep insight or understanding, profound thinker. So it seems like what we're aiming for is to talk about what makes writing profound, what allows it to go beyond what is superficial, and get into deeper topics, things that are harder to address, things that are complicated.
Sure, I would agree with that. If I think at any rate, of some of the more profound books that have stuck around, I would think of Voltaire's Candide, for example, which, while it's universal, it has this poor little slob of a character who thinks he knows things, and then he experiences war and government and a lot of things and decides that they are terrible. He thought they were wonderful, and they turned out to be terrible. But because it was a good story on the surface, and because it was profound, it's able to still be around, and you can still buy it. It's been out of print for Voltaire was in the 1700s, for quite a long time, had he been forgotten or had the book been forgotten. But it's still read, it's still used in colleges, and that's my idea of profound. And Voltaire, of course, was a kind of a caustic guy anyway, who ridiculed religion and government. And, this is one thing he said: those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. And that's pretty apt for today, I'd say.
I was just going to say that, I think what we're really touching on is what does make these books stick around. And, one of them is these universal, storylines, these universal characters. I think that's one of the reasons why we still read things like Voltaire, why Machiavelli's The Prince is still a go-to for anyone who wants to go into politics. Why The Art of War is still read by every general out there. We read these things partly because, yes, somebody before has gone through and worked out everything that you need to work out, but also I think that some universal themes will be carried through. I think it's why Shakespeare's carried through. I think it's why, I often wonder what of today will carry through into tomorrow. I'm pretty certain Tolkien's going to be one of them. It's universal. It follows all the same things of great classical literature that we carry through, and the fact that it's still beloved, 60 some odd years later is probably a good thing.
That reminds me of a quote from Writing 21st Century Fiction by Donald Moss? Moss, Brad?
Moss.
I feel like we determined this in a previous episode, but I didn't remember.
He said, he's talking about writing high-impact fiction, and he says, the characters who resonate most widely today don't merely reflect our times, they reflect ourselves. That's true whether we're talking about genre fare, historicals, satire, or serious literary stuff. Revealing human truths means transcending tropes, peering into the past with fresh eyes, unearthing all that is hidden, and moving beyond what is easy and comfortable to write what is hard and even painful to face.
Yeah.
That sounds like a prescription for writing something pretty profound.
Indeed.
Yeah, but a lot of people try to, and
No, but Donald's whole course is basically like how to write the profound novel. I mean, it's called, how to write the breakout novel, but, that's in essence what he's trying to get you to think about, is writing something and this is what I often think about because I'm hard on myself to the point because I'm a genre writer and I write for kids and I write steampunk that it's like, oh, well, I'm just writing about gears and leather and stuff like that. When in reality, I personally think that these profound moments that we keep talking about are scattered way throughout stories and books and movies than people give them credit for, which is why things like Star Wars and stuff can end up being profound. Are my books profound? No, I'm just gonna no, probably not. I'm gonna go on a limb and say no. However, having said that, there are things within each book that I would consider to be profound things that you will learn. Especially in the third book, where the character has this great kind of conversion arc and ends up deciding whether or not to go evil or good or whatever, and that process playing out, and then the reason why he ends up choosing that to stay good and everything.
Spoiler alert.
I know.
Yeah. Well,
Geez.
really? Was it ever that much? I
thought he was gonna lay waste.
But no. The thing is like, it's the what, because my thing is more what makes him make these choices, not the choice itself. And that in itself is more profound, and if you read through it, then hopefully you'll get it, and if you got one of my signed copies, you'll finally understand what the hell the inscription meant in the beginning when you get to the end. But there you go. But yeah, so I think profound things can be in all of our writing. Does that necessarily make a profound book? I don't know, but I think it is something that we all try and put into our stuff.
Let's take, for example, one of our favorite books, certainly one of Melanie's and mine. What did you name your cats, Melanie?
Oh, Mark Twain.
Mark and Twain. And my candidate for the great American novelist, of course, Huckleberry Finn, which is a book I consider to be profound because it can be read on many levels. It's just a fine little adventure story if you read it on the surface, but you can go beyond that to social commentary, which is really quite profound, and an attempt to change some ideas of his time by looking at them in a humorous way, because you first got to get people to read it before you can be profound at all. And so I think he had the real recipe for profundity. And it starts with a really entertaining book.
I was actually going to ask a bit about that. Donald Moss, in the same book, in the same section, is talking about literary versus popular fiction and how they seem to value different things. Popular fiction values a good plot, and literary values like character-driven works.
Yes.
And
beautiful writing.
Yeah, and beautiful writing. And he says they have a lot they can learn from one another, but it begged the question, is it possible to have popular fiction that is profound? And it seems Mark Twain has found the solution for that.
Well, I think another one is Harper Lee in To Kill a Mockingbird. She didn't write anything else, but...
she did, but she just wrote the same book twice.
Well, she didn't like the other one well enough to try to do anything with it in the long run. But To Kill a Mockingbird is quite profound, and while it is a voice for the times, it also helps us see the world through the eyes of an innocence, and I think that's part of the way that we can approach profundity if we want to try it ourselves. And it, of course, is a great story with a lot of fun kinds of elements in it, but once again, very profound and very moving, too.
Well, I think often literary gets kind of that instant, profound label.
Yeah.
Perhaps because they don't know what else to say about it. But, one of my favorite books and one of the most profound books that started me on the whole thing of, literature could mean something, was Zora Neale Hurston's Their Eyes Are Watching God. It is both a beautifully written book, and the messages that it talks about are amazing. That book was hugely profound to me, to me and to millions of other people who have read it over the years. So, it is something about literary fiction that I think they more often strive to be profound in maybe a way of putting it.
And sometimes they break the bank on that. They miss. Because they try too hard.
And a lot of bad literary is really, having published literary fiction and been an acquisitions editor for it, there's a lot of bad literary fiction out there, and it really is trying overly hard to be profound. And I think this is what I was just talking about with my own books. I'm a genre writer. I write genres. But even now, as I see the industry swinging in different ways, I'm kicking myself going, should I be writing the great experience novel, a la something like Paulo Coelho's The Alchemist, which is probably also one of the most profound books I've ever read, and millions of others. It was number 3 on the top-selling books of all time. And the only one to come out this century.
Wow. Is that before or after 50 Shades of Grey? I'm curious. Sorry.
50 didn't make it.
There is hope
Robbed.
for the world.
I was going to say yes. There is justice in this place. So one of the things that I love about sci-fi fantasy is that it can be quite profound in that it digs deeper into issues than one would expect, given that it's genre fiction. It's going to have a great plot and, you hope good characters. There are a lot of books with good characters. And a lot of Octavia E. Butler's stories examine really complicated topics, but they do it in such a way that you don't necessarily realize that you are learning about a different group of people or a different way of being until the story's done and you realize, I see the world a little different now. Jen?
What?
You had wanted to say something and I hadn't seen you. I'm so sorry.
No, it's fine. I don't really. What I was gonna say isn't gonna contribute to the topic now. So.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'll give it a shot.
Yeah.
We have in our history a number of books that try to show a perfect kind of world, utopia, Shangri-La. We get these terms from literature as people would like to know what a perfect world would look like, whether we can ever get there or not. But you can find some similarities in what these people talk about, whether it's Aldous Huxley or whoever. And the dystopian world seems to be what we're getting more of these days. But both of them, I think, are in a way profound because they ask us, what do we want our world to be? Because we're the only ones who can make it that.
Let's talk about utopia and dystopia in terms of profundity.
Okay, go right ahead.
And there was a time when a book called The Giver came out.
Oh boy.
And that is a fantastic utopia/dystopia story that I would say was very profound. There are scenes in that book, I read that book in middle school. Mm-hmm. There are scenes from that book that stick with me today that have influenced my writing today, that I've put in as homages. Like there's a scene when Jonas is first seeing color for the first time, and you don't realize up to that point that he doesn't see in color. He sees in black and white when he looks out over the field of people and he sees all the shades of red in everyone's skin, because red is the only color he's seeing right now. And first off, it made me think, oh my goodness, there's all different colors of red in people's skin. But then that was like the light coming on. I'm like, oh crap, he's seeing colors. And that moment right there was profound enough because not only did it like point out something about the world that he was in, but the fact that I hadn't noticed before. They didn't make a note of it. It's like that was super cool. And the whole Giver like series is all about this cautionary what we could do to ourselves if we make these certain decisions, lose our history and stuff like that. The dystopia genre, as an evolving animal, has come to a point in literary history where it started to become cliche and shallow and tropey and kind of vapid, which is the opposite of profound, in my opinion. So you've got something that is, we're going to tell the story about this world and look at it in parallel to our own world and see how it's different and how it's the same and how can we draw conclusions about our own world by reading through this other world. And then you pick up something that wishes it was Divergent, but is not. It was written after Divergent, and it was chasing Divergent because that was the goal of it, was to get everyone who bought Divergent to buy it when they were done reading Divergent. And you start reading that, and you don't see any of these. I mean, the parallels are there. If you had not read any dystopian novel, it is possible for you to pick this fictional book I just made up, which exists out there somewhere. I couldn't give you a title, though. You pick this book up, and it's the first dystopian novel you've ever read, and you look at it and you say, wow, there are so many parallels. Well, it's because that novel is relying on the previous genre, like the toolkit of the previous genre. They're just pulling all the tropes and all the scenarios and all the cliches out and just using them again without making any sort of statement on them. And I think that lack of, like, author intent is what robs it of being a profound thing. Also, you have to take the audience into consideration. An audience that has read every dystopian novel from The Giver to fictional Not Divergent is no longer impressed by these ideas. Oh, a government that's taken over and has now put people in different camps outside of the main city. Oh my. That's not something that's like a really new earth-shaking thing anymore. You know, it's not different from normal because you've read so many dystopian novels that you know what to expect in a dystopian novel. So you take all these things.
There needs to be an element of creativity, an element of being there first, of having the original idea.
I think that's kind of the argument I'm trying to make, is that profundity loses flavor the more times you steep it.
One thing that becomes tremendously unfair is when the originator is not the first book read by the person. So the original book that was written 20 years before the book is like, oh, this is just a ripoff of Harry Potter. It's like, Harry Potter's the new book. This is what Harry Potter was based on. You know?
Well, I remember Kathleen over there. She brought up an example. She showed her younger siblings The Matrix for the first time. And they were bored because they'd seen it all already. Bullet time, man, we see that everything. It's like,
in
but
track.
it's like it was new and it was the thing that was cool about The Matrix. And
awesome.
Without it, there's just nothing to The Matrix anymore.
Yes. Well, and partly our society is now generated around this. You know, we don't keep valuing content, we just reissue content to new generations that haven't experienced any content.
The Vault. The Disney Vault.
Exactly. I mean, it's just, you know, it's kind of what we as a society do. We do remakes instead of re-releasing it or something like that, you know.
Yeah.
And the remakes are sketchy. But I would actually throw that out that we were all surprised, at least I was. We've had a plethora of dystopian novels, and nobody called it that the first to rebel were going to be park rangers. So I'm actually kind of shocked that in all of dystopia, nobody ever went, the park rangers are going to be the first ones to start up and rebel.
Just goes to show you that
Not even in 1984.
real life is as interesting, if not more interesting than
Exactly.
fiction.
Why the park rangers?
They're independent.
We'll talk about alt national parks after this.
Yeah, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Those listeners, look up the Twitter account.
Yes,
you know?
it's great. But anyway,
Yeah.
my point is that dystopian is always about a reflection of the society around you. In the 60s, it was a utopian. Star Trek was created out of that. A lot of the looking ahead to the space age was very much utopian. That everything was going to be solved. We're going to be flying around in cars.
Poverty will be illegal.
Yeah, you
No
know,
one will use
everything was going to
money.
be great. Well, by the 90s, you know, we had kind of flipped that, and you know, by the 2000s, that had completely switched around, and now we had this bleak vision of a, you know, future where everything was, you know, just water was tainted and the skies were gray and craziness, and out of that is, I think, where this plethora of you know, dystopian came from. Almost a utopian society we were living in and hoping to kind of live out what we were expecting the future to look at. And now I wonder how that's going to switch with what's happening now, where we have a government that's like cracking down on rules and cracking down on all this kind of stuff. How is that going to influence tomorrow's dystopian and utopian novels?
There was a web story. I really wish I could tell you who put this up on YouTube that I saw, because I want to give him credit for it. But they pointed out that you can map the attitudes of America via iterations of Batman.
Yes.
It's like back, you had the Adam West Batman showing that everyone's like, their idea of a superhero is someone who cooperates with the police and gets in fun hijinks, and none of the villains are really that terrible. You know, maybe they put a bomb somewhere, but all you have to do is dump it in water, you know, that kind of thing. And it's kind of goofy. And then it switches over, and you're like, after 9/11, we have Batman Begins. Well, we skipped Tim Burton in there, but Tim Burton He sort of made Batman feel like an everyman existing in our real world, but still
He
fantastical.
went back to the vigilante.
Yeah, he was a vigilante. He was working on his own. Like, we can't trust the police to look after us. We can't trust the government to look out for us, but don't worry, we could strike out and do our own thing. And then, Batman Begins is like, fear is everywhere. Fear is literally the villain of Batman Begins. And Batman puts on a scary voice and punches things.
Yes. This is why I think people like Batman, is because he actually punishes bad guys. Whereas Superman rarely punishes bad guys, he just catches them.
We won't get on a huge comic book tangent again,
Oh,
because
nice.
Fedora's in line and wants to say something. I just thought it was an interesting thing to add to our
Yes,
dystopian
it
talk.
is.
Sorry, it's just like we're having a dystopian talk. Yes, we are, but that's not the topic.
That's not the topic.
Well, I want to go back to adages.
Please do.
I will. Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was a writer and a pastor, he wrote a lot of sermons in the early 1800s, said something about this, which is about the responsibility of the writer and the responsibility of us, in other words. It is, each age must write its own books, or rather, each generation for the next succeeding. So it's our job to write the books for the people who are coming after us.
Exactly. We take everything we've learned and pass it on.
Exactly.
Pass on what you have learned.
No pressure.
No pressure. I want to talk about some of the things we've read or seen that have had a profound effect because they went deeper into things than we kind of expected. And I want to bring it up because I realized that a book that is very profound, deals deeply with one particular topic, is Einstein's Dreams by Alan Lightman. And I had never read anything like it. It's a series of shorts examining how the world would be if time worked a certain way. And they're structured as thoughts that Einstein has while he's working in the patent office. So one of them is what would happen in a world where no one ever died. People would have an impossible time making decisions because if they wanted advice, they would ask their mother, who would ask their mother, who would ask their mother, who would ask their mother, and it would go back and back and back and back. There was another about time, there being spots where time stands still, and parents always want to put their children into those spots so they can, have those memories forever. Lovers want to go into those spots, and other people, they want to go live their lives, and it's a different kind of person that goes toward or away from those places. So just the examination of what the world would be like if time worked in different ways, if people worked in worlds like that, was wonderfully profound for me. And I saw things that as a writer I had never realized we could do. Does anybody else have experiences where they read something and they realized it was possible to do in writing something they hadn't realized was a thing writers could do?
So something we qualify as being profound to us personally, specifically narrowing it down to literature, because we're talking about writing profoundly.
Yeah.
All right, I gotta think about that one.
Or something that just examined things more deeply than you would come to expect, because profound things are things that go beneath the surface.
Well, I'll give one, which probably sounds a little absurd because it is. Theater of the Absurd, which came out of the 1950s and 60s. And a really stupid play called Jack or the Submission, and others like The Rhinoceros, are absurd. I mean, they're deliberately absurd, and the actions in them are absurd. In The Rhinoceros, people are in an apartment, and they see out the window a rhinoceros runs by, and then there are herds of rhinoceroses until everybody has become a rhinoceros. And this is really pretty absurd. And you say, is there any profundity there? But I say there is this idea that sometimes the world is so bizarre and so incalculably strange that the only decent thing to do about it is laugh. And I found that to be a rather profound idea.
Mark Twain said the most powerful weapon man.
Really?
You can go ahead.
No,
It's too late
Go
now.
after you.
It's okay.
Well, I'm not going to say it now, so whatever.
Wow. Well, if we were
I didn't
gonna
realize it was Whatever.
There was a line. I just had my thing up. You're allowed to talk. My example of, I guess, a profound literary experience was actually reading House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. Because that was the first book I read that stopped being a book and started being an experience. Like, it existed and it was so many stories all together, and then the physical book started rebelling from, against me. And there's an element of, it's a story of many things, and it's centered around the story of a house that's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And when you go into this room that extends into darkness forever, which is an idea that just completely, I've stolen that so many times. But it's, all the rules of time and space and matter start breaking down, and explaining it is impossible. So instead of explaining it, the text starts changing direction on the page, and stuff moves around, and it refers back to appendices that refer to different appendices, and then the whole time there's this extra story going on in the footnotes from the guy who discovered this quote-unquote manuscript and is transcribing it and putting it together for publication. And you see how in different parts of the book he keeps putting down footnotes, and you see how reading the book is changing his life at the same time because they echo each other. And the whole time we're doing this Minotaur in the Labyrinth thing all over the top of it, and it's wonderful. And I'm reading it and I'm like, this is the best book. And there's a thing in the middle, every time the word house is mentioned, it's in blue. For no logical reason. It just is, because it's significant. But, so I've read this book, I'm like, this is an awesome book. I love this book so much. And I realized the cover, which I thought was just being cool, the cover is actually two pieces. It's a black piece that goes over the top, that has a big spiral in the middle. And then there's another page underneath that has a bunch of, pictures and stuff on the inside. And I just thought that it was cool because it's a weird book. And I realized the cover is too small for the book. The black cover that's on the outside of the book is smaller than the rest of the book by about 1 inch. The house is bigger on the inside.
Oh my god!
And I'm like, this is the best book ever. So it's not so much it was a literary experience, but it was like a book experience. Mm-hmm. It's an R-rated book, so watch out for that.
That sounds... I'm gonna have to
What's
find
the title?
The House of Leaves.
Oh, okay.
Poe actually has a song about that. Isn't she his sister? The singer Poe?
I don't know.
Well, don't quote me. I think this is the case, though. Does anyone else have experiences like that, where you saw in a book something that changed the way you viewed writing, or...
Anything about Mark Twain?
Yeah, Brad, where's the quote? You sleep over there?
Uh-huh.
No, I said I wasn't going to read it.
Oh. He's
Just
mad at
taking
me.
your pennies and going home.
Alright, so, since we're not going to get to hear that quote, unfortunately, I think we should steer it in the last time that we have to how we can make our writing deeper. Like, how, whether we're writing genre or literary, popular, or, I don't know, nonfiction, how can we make our characters deeper, our topics deeper, our fiction more profound?
I feel like that's a really kind of double-edged sword there, because you have, I'm all for profundity and trying to get there, but sometimes you try a little bit too hard and it comes across, and you're kind of crossing that line into being just a pretentious little snot in your writing.
And preachy.
Yes, and preachy, and trying too hard to be overly lyrical, and it really shows. So I feel like that's kind of a thin line to walk, where you can be aiming for that, but be careful where you fall on that.
So I think that's actually a good avenue to start then with my question. So what makes something obvious? What makes something too much of a message and not enough of a good story,
I would say that it's harder in novels. If you are doing something shorter, if you are writing poetry, if you are writing a sermon, I think you're much more able to give little nuggets of profundity in those places. So I would suggest if you're really trying to go profound, maybe poetry is the way to go, and following the steps of Langston Hughes or one of the great poets who has something key to say.
Brad has mentioned earlier that his books have profound moments, but he wouldn't call the entire thing profound. And I think that's a fair assessment of a lot of things that I read. I wouldn't call them profound and deep or whatever, but they definitely had moments that are memorable for those reasons.
Your Star Wars fanfic wasn't profound?
Well, the experience was profound.
I don't think you could have profound every sentence, because it would just be such a terrible slog. Because if it's really profound, you have to stop and think about it. Don't you believe so? I mean, such as the maxims and adages that I've been talking about. The mind, this is Emerson again. The mind, once stretched by a new idea, never returns to its original dimensions. You can't, you got to stop and think about that for a little bit. And stories just don't do that. Which is why maybe doing Aesop's fables kinds of things and poetry and sermons would be more, essays might be more conducive to the...
But they're out there. I mean, the lottery's affected a lot of people.
Indeed.
The lottery is an incredibly profound short story.
How long is it?
It's not that long.
I was going to say, is it like...
Even something like The Secret Life
5,000
of
words or
Walter
something?
Mitty
Yeah.
is a short story that is profound in its own right. Only in the sense of it makes you think about daydreamers and stuff like that in a new way. I think, short stories have the potential, and really, I think a lot of movies, if we look at a lot of the Philip K. Dick stuff, his robot stuff, where he talks about the 3 laws. I mean, those laws that he worked out in fiction are now applied to robotics. I mean...
Well, frankly, his laws as they apply to his robots, frankly, let's just say he had very good programmers because, they're great in theories. Like, how do you get a robot to actually make that level of reasoning?
No, but the questions he was asking are the questions we are now currently asking about AI.
Yes.
And he laid them all out. I mean, he laid out everything we need to think about AI, 50 years ago practically, or longer, I think.
So it sounds like for shorter works, then, it's a little bit easier to consider the work profound because there's not a lot of space for excess, for example, in short stories or a poem. You have to have high impact quickly.
I think it's focus.
Focus?
Yeah. A short story, a poem, a song, these are focused. They are so short that they cannot touch on anything but the profound notion they are trying to get across. Whereas something like my book, if I were to clip out the short story that is the profound moment at the end of my book, you don't need to read the rest of my book in order to learn that one moment. That one moment is the profound moment of enlightenment where you're going to be like, oh yeah, I should think about life that way. That's easy to focus on in a moment. You can't do that in a novel, because in a novel, you don't have one focus. You have a main plot, you have character arcs, you have subplots, you have themes, you have, other things like that running through them. So I think in a novel, you are less focused. That doesn't mean novels can't be profound. Look at A Tale of Two Cities. The end of that, the entire novel is incredibly profound, but the ending of that is huge.
But that's precisely why we like the novel, because it leads us gently to that profound moment. It doesn't just bash us over the head with it. It takes us there in a way that we want to go, that we like and enjoy going with.
But King Arthur, the story of King Arthur, has been whittled down to a short story that is profound, about a king whose, son comes back to kill him, whose wife heads off with his best friend. That short story of that is what we know of Arthur, and it's what's told 1,000 times over. The giant novel that is all the Knights' arcs and the Grail quests and all this kind of other stuff that comes into it, that's all just added on kind of fodder. So, it's the novel is the giant thing. The focus, the short story, is just that one story of Arthur that comes down to us because that's human nature. It's why we all still read Hamlet.
Oh, Hamlet.
Fedora said earlier that it would be kind of a slog if something was trying to be profound nonstop. And I'm thinking about that in terms of novels now. Novels, you need to have strong moments, but you also need to have downtime so that the reader can kind of digest those things. So it seems like in that way, the setup for such profound moments is necessary for novels in a way that it isn't for short stories.
I have a practical example of this done improperly.
Improperly?
Yes.
Oh.
We don't have our friend George here to debate the merits of the second Transformers movie. But in the second Transformers movie, there is a profound moment near the end that lacked nearly all setup and fell flat as a pancake right in the middle of that huge garbage CGI fest. At one point, Shia LaBeouf looks his dad in the face and says, "Dad, you have to let me go," implying that he has to let go and let his son grow up. Except the only hints to that being a problem with his dad was like way at the beginning, 5.5 hours ago, before we knew anything was going on or what the plot was. And we'd all conveniently forgotten not only that that plot point existed, but we wished that the parents weren't there because they were annoying and they kept cutting away from what we thought was going on. So it's got this, it's sort of like when you're watching a stand-up comedian, he tells a joke and the whole room just goes silent. It's that level of cringeworthy awkwardness when they're trying to have this profound moment that means something, that's written well, and it just has absolutely no leg to stand on and it falls over.
So that's, I'm guessing, kind of what Chanel was talking about when you're trying too hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Jen, you've identified a few of the things that made it fall so flat. So they brought it up early and then never brought it up again.
Mm-hmm.
Who was it? The guy with the box who talked about why Suicide Squad was horrible in terms of editing.
David Olson, I think his name is. This show is called Folding Ideas.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
And one of the things he talked about was that if you have something you want to be like a moment or whatever, you have to have the setup. You have to have a callback, so something to remind the viewer that setup happened, that thing still exists, and then you have the payoff.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like in this case, there was the setup, and then an orgy of machinery, and then, oh right, the payoff. And you're like, my brain, though, has been scarred. Was I supposed to remember anything that happened 2 hours ago?
There's also the element of audience apathy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that moment in that movie was a hilariously laugh out loud moment for me because it was like the cherry on top of the cake of we had no idea what we were doing. But that moment was given, you know, the audio, video, camera, acting, like gravitas of a huge revelation, but it wasn't one. It was given all the importance in all the different film languages of a profound moment, but it was not profound.
Didn't do the back work.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah. So it's like we didn't care about it. We didn't feel a release when his dad let him go save the world with his robot friends, which he was already in the process of doing, and nothing was stopping him from doing it. Not even his father, who looked at him, and I don't know why his father was even there, because 10 minutes ago his father and mother were actually in Paris, and they got kidnapped by a robot that shouldn't care about them at all. And it's more confusing to the audience, and off-putting to the audience, than it is significant to the audience.
My brain was shutting down when you were explaining that. I'm sorry.
Good. Yeah, I checked out of that movie the minute that a tiny transformer started humping Megan Fox's leg.
I had forgotten that.
That was the moment when I was sitting in the theater and I said, this isn't getting any better.
I forgot about that.
Good, I'm sorry.
We've just not remembered that for the rest of our lives and been blissfully happy.
I have made it
You cannot.
immortal in words.
Why? That's something that hopefully will not get the longevity thing that then...
Oh, the Transformers series is never ending. It's making way too much money.
So, to bring it back,
Longevity, though, I don't know. give it a couple of years, and we probably won't.
They'll
see
reboot it.
so to bring it back to writing, though, it sounds like if you want to have a profound moment in a novel, for example, because we've kind of talked about short stories and how you don't have as much time, you have to be more focused. So with a novel, you want to have, the setup, the callback, the payoff. But it sounds like Transformers as well. They needed more characterization to make the audience care.
They needed less of a lot of other things as well. It's like they had the stuff there. And I'm using Transformers because, like, I have a lot of care for Transformers. I love that franchise. I was personally betrayed by that movie, so...
We were all betrayed by the first movie.
The first movie I actually loved a lot.
No, the cartoon movie.
Oh, no,
Back
that's completely different
So they have a long track record of going, oh, you like that? Boom.
Well, that was done for completely different reasons than the...
Exactly.
Because they knew they were doing it in that one.
I know.
In the second Transformers movie, they had absolutely no idea that they had ruined their thing. And they still don't, because it keeps making money. So they're like, well, just keep doing this. Yes. It's no big deal. But what was your question that you asked about it needs... You said... I think the word I said was that it needed less of a lot of other things.
Yes, that's what you said.
That you gotta pick a focus. What is your movie about? And I don't know if Transformers 2 was about anything other than get butts in seats. It tried to be about a lot of stuff. Like, it was about the matrix of leadership. It was about, oh gosh, what else was it about? I guess letting your son go, growing up, maybe. Learning to commit. There was a commitment thing going on there. For whatever reason, Shia LaBeouf would not tell Megan Fox that he loved her until she said it first, and he won. I'm gonna argue about that. Like, this is stupid.
And I'm gonna argue that would never happen in real life with Megan Fox.
The point is that any one of those elements could have been given the support structure through the rest of the stuff. Maybe the whole thing is a coming-of-age story, and you can make the commitment and the matrix of leadership and the robot fight all be about Shia LaBeouf, Sam Witwicky, learning to leave the protection of other people. And then when he looks at his dad and says, "You gotta let me go," you understand that he's risen above hiding behind everybody else, and now he's going to go out and fight the robot war for them because they're millions of years older than he is, and he's still more important than they are.
But then he went and got Mark Wahlberg to fight for him.
So that sounds like a case of a poorly done blueprint right there. So
really done everything. It's visually beautiful in a certain extent. There's lots of things happening.
So it just seems like to bring us back to writing, it seems like there is a certain level of planning that has to go into these profound moments. But then there's also these little instances of serendipity that you kind of have to learn to recognize in your own writing and build on them. Like that's a good place where your feedback group comes in, and they're like, hey, this gaping hole right here, that could have been a great moment. Go back and see that. And I've had people tell me that about stories before, and I'm like, oh, you're right. That could have been awesome. Let me fix that. But as much as it is like planning for the build up, like the backstory, the build up and payoff, you have to kind of get an eye for those moments in your own story where marvelous things could happen.
What book was it? I was reading about theme. I think it was Beginnings, Middles, and Ends by Nancy Kress. One of the things she talks about is resonance, which goes hand in hand with what makes a moment in a story profound. She talks about after you've written the first draft, go through and find things, symbols, things that you have repeated, maybe subconsciously, things that you could potentially bring out. Focus a little bit more on in a few different places so that at the end, when everything comes together, the reader has the experience of, it all works together, it's all connected. Mm-hmm. And she says, don't shoehorn things in there, look for what's already there. And I think that's a good way of bringing out the profundity in your work, whether it's a short work or something longer that just has moments. Look for what's already there and focus in on it just a little bit more, and you'll have something great. And I think on that note, we're going to call it a day, unless, Fedora, you want
I have a
lead us
final
out?
word. May I say a final word?
Yes, ma'am, you can.
Actually, it's from Oscar Wilde, who was one of my favorite authors ever. Words, mere words. How terrible they were. How clear and vivid and cruel. One could not escape from them. And yet what a subtle magic there was in them. They seemed to be able to give a plastic form to formless things, and to have a music of their own as sweet as that of a viol or lute. Mere words. Was there anything so real as words?
And on that beautiful note,
Ray say profound.
Yeah.
Oh.
Profoundly.
on that note, just beautiful and profound and
Deep as
wild.
the ocean and the mind.
Yes.
Oh my.
We want to thank you all for listening this week, and hope you listen next week. And in the meantime, have a great week writing.
Did you know that Right Pack Radio has an international audience? How would you like to reach that audience in regards to your books, your book services, your author services, or more? Go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com and look under advertising for more information. If you don't have a script, that's not a problem. We will be happy to work with you. Once again, go to www.windingtrailsmedia.com for more information.
The new theme songs for Right Pack Radio were written and performed by Meredith Tate. All copyrights remain with her.